Good afternoon, everyone. Appreciate you being here for our post-harvest pest management session. I'm Gabrielle Ludwig, Director for Environmental Affairs, and I'm still trying to get used to these lights being straight in my eyes. Sorry. So if I'm blinking a lot or doing this, it's because I'm truly blinded. Really want to thank everybody for being here. Also just wanted to remind everybody, if you haven't gone down to the Almond Board booth and picked up the research update that summarizes or gives you a sense of all the research the Almond Board funds. And we have two more speakers that we know exist in this building that are to arrive. So just in case you're wondering, but I would like to get started. I just wanted to say, you'll hear some presentations why we're focused on post-harvest management. And for those of you who work on the growing side, you know, we have a whole cadre of UC IPM specialists and other researchers that work in pest management on the growing side. When we look at pest management in the post-harvest management side, so in the huller, sheller, the handler, and for export, our expert base becomes a lot thinner. And really what we wanted to focus on today is sort of how do we think about integrated pest management in the post-harvest arena. And when we think about integrated pest management, that is, how do you prevent pest problems in the first place? How do you monitor for pest problems? And then if you do need to treat, how do you treat effectively? And so the speakers today will give you a sense of options in all those three areas. I'll give some brief introductions. So our first speaker will be Abhijit, we all call him Abhi, Kulkarni. He's the principal for technical and trade issues at Almond Board. Prior to joining us about 3 years ago.
2.5, yeah.
He worked for the Walnut Board, and he also has a master's in food science from the University of California, Davis. Our second speaker is someone coming from outside the almond world. It's Eric Myers. He's the global IPM manager for Archer Daniel Midland's, ADM. And when you think about it, what does ADM do? They do a lot of flour, a lot of food, pet food. They have a lot of post-harvest treatment facilities and needs. So he brings knowledge about, okay, you got a pest problem in your facility, what is it and how do you find it? So he spent about 20 years in the field. He actually does not come back from an entomology background, but sidled his way into this area. So I asked him to come and just talk about what are things that he's learned over his time of working across all these different food manufacturing and pet food manufacturing facilities, but what to look for. And then our third speaker is Dr. Zhongli Pan. He's an adjunct professor in the Biological and Ag Engineering Department at UC Davis. He's also the founder of a company called AI Vision. And ABC has actually worked with him on the almond quality and food safety side for a number of years and a number of projects. I'm aware of working on drying, but I suspect I'm not fully aware of everything you've done for ABC. And then the last speaker is Dr. Spencer Walls. He is the research chemist with USDA ARS at Parlier in their post-harvest pest management group. He has a PhD in chemistry from Yale University, and he's a Illinois Midwestern boy at his heart. So with that, I'm going to hand it with Abhi to start and go from there, and we will hold questions and do them at the end.
Perfect. Thank you, Gabrielle, for the introduction. Good afternoon, everybody. So my job is actually pretty simple. My job is to set up the stage for the discussion from the experts and to provide some context of why this topic is important. So traditionally, when we think of product flow in the supply chain, it goes like more or less growing, harvesting, size it, clean it, pack it, ship it, and then say wave goodbye to the ship, and it's like you're done, right? Not quite, because supply chain is getting complex, supply chain is getting longer, and with climate change, there is evolving more risks that are being introduced into the supply chain. And so consequently, buyers are getting more than just almonds, and they are not necessarily happy about it. These are just a couple of pictures we received from buyers. One is from, the left one is from UK, the other one is from Spain, where they said, look, this is what we are receiving in you guys' shipments. What can be done about this? Because they themselves, oops, let's see, there you go. because they themselves have their own reputation that they are concerned about, because a lot of these buyers are not end buyers, but they in turn are supplying to somebody else. So this was an actual email I received. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but the gist, if you especially look at the second last paragraph. So it's 3 years ago, I made a journey to California. This is people from UK I met at a conference, and they sent me this email. 3 years ago, I made a journey to California. I visited various suppliers. All had very little interest in talking about this issue of infestation, almost an arrogance towards it not being an issue. Ouch. This is not a good look for us. Now, of course, some of this could be perception, so more subjective. Some of them could be just frustration, and some of them is reality. So we can't deny that, as you saw from the pictures, that our buyers are not getting what they are getting. And then further on, they say, of course, we face the issue of a minimum product recall of $150,000 for each time some plays happen, and creates a blacklist against our mark. So they don't want this either. So of course, there's two sides to all the stories, right? Now, maybe not this particular story, but we have heard frustration from shippers, from you guys, that you did everything you could. You fumigated the shipment right before, and when the product arrived, the buyer just took his sweet time picking it up from the port, and it sat there in hot, humid weather. Quality was deteriorating, and that kind of started a chain reaction. Or sometimes they have picked up the shipment, put it in the warehouse, and didn't bother to inspect it, and then 2 months later suddenly said, hey, we have an issue with your shipment. So that's not exactly how things should be done. And so we realized that, okay, communication matters in this case. I think we are all on the same side, but we need to kind of talk to each other. So we've developed this guidance, not brochure for, this is for the buyer side. So the shippers can use this to provide to the buyers of what are some of the steps they can take after receiving the product in the whatever market they are, in terms of proper product handling and proper warehouse practices, proper pest control while the product is in their control. And there is also a sister guidance to this that we have also developed. This is for our industry here in terms of what are some of the steps we can do here to minimize the risk of this becoming an issue in the first place. And so if anybody would like these publications, just reach out to me, because we have this in digital format, in PDF, so we can easily share, email it to your buyers. And so lastly, just kind of put an inflection point on this discussion. So here's a chart of the rapid alerts or aflatoxin-related rejections in EU we see in the last few years. And if you look at the second bar, which is the 2023 second from the right, and 2022, you see those, let's see, there you go, now it shows that. The 2 and 8 that's highlighted in orange, these are related to infestation. Well, the rest of the blue ones are aflatoxin rejection. So not only is this a B2B issue, but this is also a regulatory issue where import control authorities are flagging shipments when they see something, and that results into a rejection. And this is why this topic is so much important, and I'm going to now pass it on back to Gabrielle. Eric, yeah, thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about 3 ideas, bullet points. I want to mindset, the type of pest, why it matters, and then the site and the manufacturing process. And kind of hopefully when we go through this, at the end of this, you'll see if you've kind of got all these 3 working together, you can really solve some problems and reduce some pressures with pests. So often I get a couple different responses when I'm in facilities, and sometimes it's like this video here that shows is, wow, how did you find this? And this is a finished product tote, just highly infested with, this is cigarette beetle in this example here. But how did you find that in this large warehouse? And the second thing I often get is a new commodity. Well, you know they come in with the field, right? This is an ag issue. This is a buy point issue. So this is a peanut facility. And then I typically have the same response. The evidence was there. I just knew and started looking in the right areas to discover spillage and collection, kind of this condition that was sitting there for who knows how long. We haven't cleaned that, but full of flower beetle, Indian meal moth. I think there was some Mediterranean flower moth in there as well. And so it kind of starts that discussion at the plant level and these different commodities that ADM deals in, that we got to think and start looking at what we can control within our facilities, kind of where these conditions are. So I start a lot of my talks with why. This is kind of a core principle with me on why we do things. And so what motivates us? And there's a few examples here that might apply to some of you in the room. Complaints is my #1 driver. And Abhi just talked about, kind of your industry, and you're seeing that increase, that it's your customers are saying this isn't acceptable. When I joined ADM, this was something I said, I can impact this for ADM. These are disruptive. They cost a lot of money. The cost of correction, et cetera. So that's a big motivation for me. Weakens our customer relationship. So brand protection, but we have some of our folks in different industries that still have that mindset. I put here for the benefit of this talk, almonds will always have bugs. Our grain guys, I get that all the time. Well, it's part of the process, Eric. There's nothing we can do about it. So, but this mindset to me that's the starting point. So just a couple little blurbs I have on IPM. So it's just boiling it down to long-term prevention of pests and their damage, and really looking at the environmental kind of impacts, the factors in there, and then kind of changing that. So, and I need to change this last line. So eliminate those conditions so that it's not favorable for those pests. That's really the key here, is to change that environment. The insect itself, the presence, they're there, right? So yes, we have the inherent risk, we have that predicted risk. We know that almonds have certain insects associated with them. We know that we have wheat, corn, flour, et cetera. We know that there's certain pests that have a certain predicted or susceptibility to those commodities, but the presence is the effect, not the cause. And so kind of in that mindset, not saying, well, it's because we make wheat flour that we have flour beetles. No, we have an abundance of flour beetle because we aren't cleaning in certain areas, and it's allowing that insect to continue its life cycle. And this picture here, that's a peanut shell, half a peanut shell. I thought I had a video on this, I don't. But we're talking millimeter-sized insects. There's about 10 flour beetle inside that half peanut shell, just to give some perspective that there's enough leftover nut meat in there for those insects to be happy. But it's not that, again, it's the peanuts have a high susceptibility to flour beetle. Those nutshells were on the ground for 6+ months. So again, opportunity. Then another part that is kind of I found in my career is, the pests. We got to boil it down to the pests. Now, I did not grow up in the academic side of it, right? I didn't go to school for entomology. I have a culinary degree, actually. So I got into pest control just by happenstance. So a lot of my experience is real-world experience, seeing it in the field and reading the textbooks and seeing, hey, that isn't quite what I read. So it's kind of more reality in these environments. But understanding the different type of feeders, you've got your primary feeders and your secondary feeders. So if you're talking whole grains, you've got your weevil and your lesser grain borer that bore into that. That's a storage, kind of incoming grain or your almonds kind of storage. And then at different points within the process, you have different opportunities for different insects to start to attack that. So once you're able to start breaking that down, you can start to identify where those vulnerability points are within the facility and the manufacturing process. Again, using the evidence that the insect presence there is saying something else is going on here, it's this part of the process, here's a few areas that we should start to look at. And then the life stages is another one that I talk a lot about internally. I like to use the word mobile and immobile on purpose. Try to get some different thought. When you hear mobile, you hear moving around. So our adults and the larvae, they move around. They're easier to see. that's not my target. I am after the immobile life stages. So when we find those pockets of buildup underneath that bucket leg, the second video, when we start finding those and we start removing those eggs, that's when we start to really be able to get control of these insects in these environments. So I'm focused on the different life stages, knowing that the adults are kind of my evidence, and then it's, why are you here? The last part here in this picture, there's certain, so the larva of the Indian meal moth is going to wander to go find a protected spot to finish its life cycle. So knowing where we might also need to be looking for the different life stage of that insect to, again, make the greatest impact. So how do I find all these areas? I do my own photography and videos, so how do I find all these areas? So when I'm a data-driven guy. When I'm at a facility, I do not like to go into the facility without a pest control map and data written on it. I kind of feel like I got the twitches if I don't have this information. It gives me a sense of calm. I know where I need to go, and in some cases, I have very limited time. I might be visiting 3 facilities in a week, and I've got half a day, so I've got to be tactical. And so this is how I can kind of cut through and say, here's where my visit can give the best benefit for what time I have available. So some maps easier. This one I had to do by hand, but when you look at here, this stuck out to me. This range, and I don't know if it shows well on the screen, but there's about 1,000 instances of captures there, and this is cigarette beetle in this example. So I'm like, I need to go there. There's a concentration. It's a warehouse, so racking, started asking about inventory, ended up finding some old aged material, and that first video with that toad of that cigarette beetle was in this circle. So again, using the evidence of the pest in that area and then starting to ask questions about the environment, our process, aged inventory, what's going on, and then just start digging. So you're going to hear theme, right? Conditions, presence. It all comes together, I promise. So why are they here, right? So I've got my map. I know where I need to get to. I've got my sense of calm, so as we're walking through, I end up seeing a whole lot of other stuff too, because I'm not worried about where I need to go. I know where I need to go. So it allows me to ask a lot of processing questions. One, just a fan of manufacturing. I'm fascinated by manufacturing, so asking questions on how things work and what they do. But through that, I learn different vulnerable points, and you dig in that, you find a line, you follow it. So. But when I have that map and I find my target spots I want to go to, now I'm trying to, why are you here? The presence is telling me something is here, and I'm trying to figure out what it is. Where's the shelter? Where's the opportunity? I often see a ladder and a platform, and I just sometimes look at human nature and say, nobody wants to climb that, so I'm going to climb that. Get up top, and there's usually a lot of spillage and a lot of pest activity. We might be seeing a lot of activity on the ground level. Everyone's focused on the ground level. I'm saying up top is where they're falling down from. So just human nature, somebody climb up high, et cetera. But these are where these insects kind of take that opportunity and exploit the environment and do what they do, survive and reproduce. So this picture here, I think this is a vibratory conveyor belt, which should apply to your industry here. You can see in the circle, there's a little bit of spillage there. This blue is relatively new, safety guarding, right? Safety is important. We don't want people reaching in. There's some mechanics there kind of gyrating. We don't want people to stick their hands in there, break their hand. A lot of activity in this area from pheromones and on the ground, and so I look inside, and we just have a heck of a playground for these flower beetle to do whatever they want to do. Now we're getting ready for a large Vapona fogging, and this is hidden and protected. Survival, quick rebound. I was able to get an air wand and clean this out as best I could. We didn't have the people on staff to disassemble it and really get in there. But finding these, so when we talk about chemicals are a necessity, we need them against pests, but my gimmick, if you will, is find the source, then use the chemical where it needs to be, not shoot, ask questions later. Use the evidence, find it, clean it, now do something with it. So we were able to clean this out as best we could. Hundreds came on the ground, but we did two things. Now we cleaned eggs. Remember, immobile, we cleaned the eggs out of there. Adults are easy. Vapona's going to kill them like crazy. But now we also had an action that immediately before startup, we can now open that piece of equipment and when we had the resources and clean it. So we identified something, we did what we could to have the best impact. Now we have an immediate action to finish the job. Another example, things I'm looking for. Idle equipment, oh man, I'm a beacon to it. So it's one of my first questions, hey, any equipment that's not in service or what's that over there? Oh, don't worry, we don't use it. It's like, let's go there right now. Well, we don't use it, no problem. I said, let's go there right now. And usually we open it, we see residual and a bunch of activity, and it's sometimes one of those aha moments. But then you start tracking the system, and it's like, it's still connected to an active system. And it's like, we got to at least disconnect it, disassemble this, so clean it. So there's certain things, again, these insects are going to exploit and be able to do their thing. So idle equipment, dead zones, that's what I'm after, hidden and protected, where the eggs and the pupa are. So another picture here, this is a flour mill. So this arrow is pointing to, this is underneath a rotary airlock valve to a blow line. I see a kind of a dead spot under there. Hard to access with a broom or a central vac attachment. And so underneath you see there's some flour. It's not terrible. I've found these fully packed before. This isn't bad, but you can see the trails. But then there's the little golf ball size piece of flour there. And once I crush that, there's 30 or 40 in there. So again, we're ready for a large Vapona fogging. There's a theme there too, by the way. Hidden and protected. So find this, we'll kill some of those, but again, then think about the eggs left over, or the eggs that the surviving females are gonna lay 2 to 3 a day, and the cycle just continues, quick bounce back. So hidden and protected are where these insects are going to take over. And then age product and packaging. So again, these are some of those conditions I'm looking for, but it all stems with that immobile kind of life stages there. Okay, it's repeatable. So 2 examples, here's number 3. These are all 3 different commodities also. So this is repeatable. As long as we have good data, you have a why that you want to problem solve some things, we can identify this, we can repeat this process. I haven't yet been to an industry, I've gotten frustrated on some things, but it's steered me pretty straight so far in my career. No matter what commodity I've dealt with within ADM, I've helped some of our customers out as well. This has crossed borders down in other countries that we have processes, so it is a repeatable process, but it starts with having good monitoring, good data, and then having that understanding that, again, that insect is the presence is the effect, not the cause. Now use the data to identify some of these things. So kind of last example here, this is an edible bean facility where we essentially just clean and pack out beans for further processing. So here, same thing, had an area that I'm like, I want to go look for this. Something here is triggering. I happen to actually be in Canada, coming down from a site I was helping up there, flying out of Detroit. This plant was nearby. I'm like, I have an hour and a half or so that I can give you. So kind of like I said, limited time. We're getting ready for a Vapona fogging this weekend. PCO's there getting set up. So I'm like, well, let me stop by, let me see how things are going. Let me kind of look at this area, see if we've got things ready to go. So just so you know, this is how we pack these or store these beans. It's just in a burlap sack in a crate. And so when there's splits like this, highly attractive to Indian meal moth. That's our primary pest with these edible beans. And so what we discovered was, and so you got to think this is horizontal. It's underneath a purlin support, horizontal support. But when I was there, looked in this area, found the wandering larva getting underneath this purlin to finish its life cycle, hidden and protected. So we were about to do this fogging. This is underneath. It's in a safe zone. That's going to be survival. So we were able to get the group together. We delayed turning the plant over to the pest control company by an hour or two so that we can clean this area. Pest control company then put a residual in this area. We fogged, and we had way better results than what we had seen in previous treatments. So kind of wrapping up here, putting the mindset. So again, are you just with the status quo, or you kind of looking to solve some problems? So internally I've had to say, do you want the problem gone today, or are you looking to solve the problem? And if you're looking to solve the problem, it's going to take some work. You're going to have to roll your sleeves up and dig. These stored product insects are complex puzzles, or chess matches, I often call them. Move, counter move, defense, offense. They're challenging. They sometimes go seasonally. They could take multiple years to have good confidence under control. They're insects we have to live with and manage daily based on our commodities that we handle. So having that mindset, then knowing, again, the patterns and the biology and the pests and how that impacts with the site and the processing and how they're exploiting it, and you take that, you arm yourself with that, and you start going to look for these areas, you will solve some problems. And I guess my last video here, if it plays, this is an idle piece of equipment. We shut it down, we walked away from it, getting ready for a fogging. And found it. We just shut it down, walked away, stopped that part of the process. Now, it was not connected to anything still active, but still, in the area, we still were seeing heavy presence of flower beetle, and everyone's like, why? We started to look and dig, and we found this idle piece of equipment we never cleaned. So I have the rule, clean it, disassemble it as much as you can until we can remove it. And they're like, well, Eric, I'll have that out next week. I said, disassemble and clean it until we remove it. No, next week. No, disassemble, clean it until we remove it. I've been in the food industry long enough to know that 2 weeks ends up being 2 years and then 5 years. So that's the rule. Clean it, disassemble it until it's removed. So I think that's all I have. Thanks. Thank you.
All right, good afternoon. Some of you probably heard my report a couple years ago for this project. We have been working at the UC Davis. Definitely like to bring you up to date regarding this is the insect detection project. I do want to thank you for your support. You may not realize you contributed to Almond Board. Almond Board has been supporting the research at UC Davis. It's a rather long journey, but I'm very happy with your support. We made a lot of progress. Hopefully you will agree with me. We have something can address the issue the industry are facing. Eric just mentioned the importance of the IPM, and also I very much appreciate his vision and practice about the data-driven decision for the IPM. Particularly for the industry, we are facing the challenge how we can reduce the cost, and also try to get a data-driven decision. We need to know where, when, how the insect infestation start. Right? So for that, now we are in the age of the AI. So I see the opportunity we can use the AI to improve the efficiency of the APM. When we improve the efficiency, it doesn't matter is the processor or the fumigation service companies, that will reduce the cost. At the same time, if we can find the insects early, that will prevent a lot of issues related to the quality loss, food safety risk, and others. So, as you know very well, since you are here, and the insect pest has the high problem and can cause the damage. At the same time, moisture management, that's another issue related to insects and also related to the quality. When we talk about the insect infestation for the APM, in general, we are talking about the monitoring, right? We have to find the insects, then we know how to control them. What you see here, basically right now, the traps are very typical method for people to do the scouting and the inspection, inspect the traps, then identify the risks. However, the inspection takes human power. We may not be able to do it all the time. Once again, with your support at UC Davis, we start the research looking for something is more modern, is more efficient. We developed this technology called the smart probe. So what you see here on the left, those are two types of the probes we developed at UC Davis, and now it's available for people to use. The longer one is used for detecting insects in the products. The one on the right is used to capture the insects in the air, like the warehouse, processing room, something like that. So the smart probe has the camera, temperature, and humidity sensors. As you know, when we know the relative humidity and temperature, we can convert it to the moisture content of the product. We send all the images and along all the data to the cloud. We developed an AI algorithm to identify the insect species, such as the Indian mealmouse or red flower beetles. We automatically count them too. Then we shoot the data to the app. So the app can be installed with a computer or your mobile device. Very, very easy. So when the insect's there, and you can get an automatic notification. So also you can see the details by enlarging the image. We also just released the feature, all the data can be automatically formatted, reported. It's easy for regulatory compliance. Let me show you a few examples, including the insect detection and insect damage. So this is at one of the company went there, and we put this is a couple years ago, the prototype probe. We put it into the box. You can see after 3 days, we see red flower beetles. After 45 days, we see a lot of them. What does that mean? These boxes more or less ready for ship. If we ship the overseas clients, the customers, that may not be the good experience. For those, the fiber beans, for this case, they randomly pick up the 2 of the beans. 1 was okay. Another one, after 5 days, we start to see the red flower beetles. Once again, after 45 days, a lot of them. Can we normally detect them? No, it's very, very difficult to open the container or the box beans to find the insects. Another thing is about the insect damage rate. We know insects damage the product, but we never had a project to identify the rate. We did a lot of tests. This is just a kind of examples. We tested 3 different temperatures using 1, 5, and 10 red flower beetles put into 100 kernels. Take one example, the one on the right. After 3 days, 1 red flower beetles can cause the 23% damage. That's a lot. So that's why we do not want to see any insects in the product. For the stockpiles, we put our probes in. We were able to detect all the different kind of insects, what you see on the screen. Also, through the research, we were able to identify how, when, where the insect starts. In general, insects start in the warm area and start from the surface. If we can monitor the low area specifically, we get a good indication when the insects start early. For this year, at one of the company, they collaborate with us. They pick up 10 stockpiles, 10, for 2 weeks. We put our probes in to monitor the temperature, humidity, and the insect activity. For the 10 stockpiles, we found the insects. During this 2 weeks, the insects damage for those 4 stockpiles increased 2%. 2%, that's a lot of economic value, right? And also, it had a lot of the mold because of moisture. So then the company decided to change the practice this year. And also, for the moisture monitoring, we did a lot of tests in the lab and also in the field. So the probe can monitor the moisture very well. This shows the monitoring in one of the warehouse. They have the almond products. We can clearly see how the insect is going. This is very interesting. This is the packaging facility. You see the probe on the left. We put 3 of those against 7 traditional traps. When you look at the chart, the red bars are those, the red flower beetles caught by the probes. The blue ones by traditional trap. What do you see here? A few points. Number 1, the probe caught red flower beetle 3 months sooner than the regular one. And definitely, the red flower beetle lasts a lot longer than people realize, and also caught a lot more. And also, this particular example, they have a zero tolerance policy. Means if they found a red flower beetle, they need to do the treatment. However, we do feel the traps miss a lot of them. Then where did the flower beetles go? Probably they end up in the product, right? You know the possible consequence. Another challenge monitoring the insect activity is about the dust in the processing facility. So what you can see for this facility, so because of that, they cannot put those traps close to those areas with high insect activity. But however, they put our prototype probes under the sorting machine and with the dust environment. It worked really well. And that's what you see. This year, at this particular facility, we did 2 different processing facility, worked both the similar result. So what we see now, definitely we can use this kind of probe to remotely detect, monitor the insect activity. It can be operated with either Wi-Fi or the Bluetooth. As you have seen, it can be used for the warehouse, processing room, in the product, in the almond stockpile, all the different applications. Do not really need to have people to go there. You see it, and it gives you confidence. You don't need to go there. You know what's going on, give you convenience, right? Definitely, if we do not need to go there, that's save money, save the labor. So when we look at the new practice, always the saving or the cost come to people's mind. Is this cost you more or cost less? So definitely, I put some of the numbers, plug in your facility, your practice, your contract service could be different. But in general, what I have heard from the industry, this is the new one, can save the cost. And also, more importantly, it works 24/7. I just mentioned about the zero tolerance policy. You know what is going on, right? We want to catch the insect before it spikes. We can do that. But right now, typical practice, doesn't matter if we do the internal or we do the contract. We do like a weekly scouting and inspection. That's really costly. We may miss the point when the insect spikes. And the list shows the different applications, what we have been working with the industry. And I do want to bring up one more example about the house pile. We remove the house. That's normally the reservoir for the red flower beetles during the summertime. We need to monitor the insect activity in the house stockpiles, stop there before they move into the processing facility. That will reduce the pest pressure in the processing facility, save a lot of money for the IPM. And another thing is about the fire risk. So we see a lot of fire for stockpile house, and we can monitor insect activity and temperature gain at the same time. When the temperature is high, then we can take actions to avoid the fire. Once again, thank you so much and for your support. You see a lot of the companies, they have been working with us during the last 2 or 3 years. And more important, most of them after working with us, most of them on the page, and they are using for their pest control. So I do want to thank you for all your support and also adopt the new technology. So we do have the probes ready, people can use. We also have a booth. The number is 613. So after this presentation, this session, and you are welcome to stop by. Our team will be happy to talk to you. We have a lot of new features I have not had the chance to mention. Automatic report, very, very easy for regulatory compliance. Thank you so much.
So one of my favorite things is to go last and to kind of try to tie everything together here, maybe before I'm sure Gabrielle will do a great job of that. But the last sentence, regulatory compliance, right? And so this is kind of what I'll be dealing with, specifically sanitary and phytosanitary treatments. We had Abby kind of set the stage with rejections and the need when you ship hundreds of thousands of dollars overseas and or to a domestic customer and the product's dirty. I mean, we all hate these emails of dirty product showing up. And so that's kind of the origin of all this. And then we had Eric do a really good job of kind of talking about the macro level of these facilities and IPM and cleanliness. And to your trading partners or to your buyers, that's understood that you're taking the protections and the precautions at the packing facility. And then we had Zhongling talk about his crafty way for monitoring and understanding what these population densities are and how to address them and how to time your IPM and particularly your sanitary and phytosanitary fumigation, heat, cold, whatever it may be, approaches so that you're not wasting time and money. So I'm going to introduce kind of the program a little bit so you understand what it is that my team does and how the USDA Ag Research Service and the Almond Board can kind of help you guys. And that starts with kind of understanding what we do. So my primary lab's down in Fresno. And I have a lab at UC Davis. That's the quarantine facility where we work on the post-harvest approaches for controlling all the nasties, everything ranging from spotted lanternfly to Mexican fruit fly. It goes on and on and on. And as Gabrielle said, I'm a chemist by training. And the area that I've been able to kind of occupy here is just in relation to agricultural trade. And we're all familiar with the significance of kind of the global marketplace and its importance in profitability and in maintaining really the food supply, right? And as our product traverses these political boundaries, we run into interferences that we can call loosely trade barriers. And I'd say some of our biggest struggles in California are at the county level, where we have, let's say, maybe even loose oversight from the state. And then we have, of course, state-level oversight, federal, and then international. And you really need to be cognizant of all of these things as you're moving your food across the globe to the different consumers. And what my team tries to do is get out in front of this as much as possible. I mean, there's still a lot of firefighting, but we have to kind of foreshadow and proactively address, at least as much as possible, the consumer, and then ultimately how they reflect their opinions in these regulatory demands. And we do focus on the science, of course. I'm a scientist, but you cannot divorce this from politics and economics. And some of the research demands that my team has can really kind of be focused down into this one diagram. So because everything's moving around, we have a lot of demands on pest-free security, right? So we have to use pesticides. And some of those countries that value their ecological integrity the most are where these requirements are the strictest. Think of Japan, Australia, New Zealand, et cetera. A lot of time working to preserve their ecological integrity and make sure we're not spreading these pests. Particularly with FSMA, we have increased demands on food safety. And so we've got to use these antimicrobials. And kind of collectively, this food security and food safety space, these are sanitary, phytosanitary issues. And really the response and the transparency within this space varies greatly, right? I mean, a food recall can happen with complete transparency within 3 days across the globe. Whereas some of these insect treatments are really not too transparent. And this is something that it really is ultimately driven by industry and then through the government bodies. So that's where this talk is going to focus. I mean, we could also talk about maximum residue levels and using these residues as trade barriers, or even now this new hot space of disinfection byproducts, where we're using a disinfection approach that's creating or modifying, adultering chemical signatures, and we call those DBPs. But at the end of the day, the nightmare I think that we all can resonate with is that we've got to use these chemicals, or you can call them biologicals, you can call them whatever you want, but they're so highly restricted, right? And people are just really kind of fickle with what chemicals they like and what chemicals they don't like. And in the agricultural community, I think that's enough said. We know we've got a target on us. So, the work that we do, I think, is pretty important. I was at a conference not too long ago, and it was referred to as the Valley of Death, and in science, as it translates all the way to commercial practice, you've got basic research, and then you have commercial adoption, and there's this huge gamut of things that need to be done, and opportunities and levels of investment that occur along that pathway. And what we try to do is work with y'all to really get you guys solutions for the here and the now. And of course, we think about the future, but sometimes in this regulatory space, the future is 15 years out at the shortest, right? And you need solutions immediately. And so we try to cooperate with different grower and packers and shippers to understand what is their infrastructure, their operation, their logistical constraints, what markets are they going to, et cetera, so we can help them overcome sanitary, phytosanitary issues really on their stores and then on their finished products. And I really like this slide too. This is, the big picture. This is the challenge with sanitary, phytosanitary issues are feeding people. And there's a consumer and regulatory motivation to reduce these plant protection products. So we have this constant loss of material tools that we're dealing with. And of course, the only way to combat that is with innovation. And for all these years, we've been doing a great job through innovation of keeping ahead and feeding the globe. And you think of things like in the early 1900s of fixing nitrogen and all these things that have really advanced, and then World War II and us, basically really, pushing for a globalized economy, and that kind of caused the population to skyrocket, and we've been doing a great job. And as some of you know, the state of California, DPR, has started a sustainable pest management initiative. And this is something that we have to take really seriously in light of the fact that the sanitary, phytosanitary treatments are mandated by the buyer or the importer and are required. So that draws me to the next slide here is With all these eyeballs on food moving around and invasives, and then the consumer and political ideologies or regulatory ideologies that we don't want a lot of chemicals, we really need to take a closer look at this stuff. Okay, so the one key thing, I think, the take-home slide here, is that for addressing sanitary and phytosanitary issues, these post-harvest treatments are key. And that's because that's where your operations and your logistics are centered. You can do the most with the least in a post-harvest sense. For those of you in this room who think we are going to be spraying broad-spectrum insecticides in California 50 years from now, I would bet against that, right? We're going to need more tools, but that spray on acres is really probably not going to last too much longer. And so to think of these post-harvest fumigants, and that includes water and steam and low oxygen and nitrogen, so we do have some organic options. Instead of just sweeping these things under the bare skin, we really need to start embracing these because they don't leave essentially the residues which are creating all the consumer concern, all right? And in particular, fumigation, albeit it could be organic, water, steam, et cetera, they're really the best suited to satisfy these sanitary and phytosanitary demands right now and satisfy this consumer and regulatory itch. And I really thought about putting something like best on this slide. But when you look at these alternatives right now, like heat and irradiation, very difficult to do at the scales that we have, production and our production lines. And it's just a tremendous challenge. So it's still our best tool. And I referenced this Sustainable Pest Management initiative. And, I have been hired to write the commodity fumigation chapter, and just be assured that this will reflect SPS rules, importer requirements, and how we have to address these sanitary issues to move our food, and how the domestic regulations or state level regulations, they better accommodate this, or else it's a really sad situation. And here's just like a snapshot of what the ARS team down in Parlier has done, working with the almond industry over all these years. We start with methyl bromide development in the 70s for some of your key export markets, to include India. The metal phosphide fumigation, not only of the piles, but also market access issues, were developed in the 80s. This big red line, that's when methyl bromide was basically banned, but all for the quarantine pre-shipment uses. And since then, we've seen the advent of phosphine, cylinderized phosphine, which still is not on the table in India. This has been, we've been wanting to get this through for about 15 years. We also, with the loss of methyl bromide, had to develop propylene oxide and steam sterilization treatments. We were getting pasteurization with your methyl bromide treatments. You remove that. People really didn't have much of an idea about that. And now we have this separate pasteurization step, which if not done, it creates its own set of challenges, and I'll talk about that in a second. Sulfuryl fluoride came in really strong in the 2010s. Thank goodness we have this as a tool. And then I think moving forward, a lot of these low oxygen in packaging type approaches are really going to be powerful, particularly for Europe, where we can't use methyl bromide, nor can we use PPO at the time, although we are trying to get PPO, obviously, into Europe. When you put all the numbers together, it's something like $2 trillion of almond export are directly attributable to this work out of Parlier. Okay, and I thought Eric did a really good job in primary feeders and secondary feeders and all that. But the reality is our targets, classify them as two types. You've got those that are coming in on the product from the field. And for you guys, that's like a huge deal, right? That's navel orangeworm and now carob moth, which really occupy the same space. And if you don't disinfest those things and you bring them in, you are going to have issues, all right? And even if you can control navel orangeworm and carob moth in the field, say SIT starts working, mating disruption starts working, you're still going to have to do your sanitary phytosanitary treatments to control these field pests because nobody wants them. And we've got these storage pests, which are the beetles. Let's say red flower beetle, we heard Indian meal moth, dried fruit beetle. And then along all this opportunity are the pathogens we we need to control. And we really got the incoming to do this on. We've got the storage products to do this on in that scenario, and then a final outgoing, maybe cleanup before the stuff goes out the door. And this is a cartoon, but this is, I think, a really good kind of sketch of methyl bromide and how things used to be. And here we've got a methyl bromide chamber. The advent of the 4-hour vacuum methyl bromide fumigation was a huge step forward. But even if you didn't have a vacuum chamber and could accommodate basically pasteurization and initial field infestation, disinfestation within 4 hours, you could do it in a 24-hour NAP, normal atmospheric pressure fumigation. So that allows you to clean up basically product from the field with a pasteurization step. And then all you have to worry about is the rebound of the storage pests. And you could maybe go in once the populations, or if you're using one of Zhongling's new machines, you can figure out when that's going to happen. Boom, go in and clean it up. You really just have the storage pests to deal with. When we pulled this plug on methyl bromide, there was some fallout. And kind of in its place, initially it was propylene oxide, and then came along steam. And these treatments are not easy to do on incoming. So you've got a delay into when you can get that product through the pasteurization process. And that typically, again, does not occur on incoming. So you have navel orangeworm issues lasting, which can fester the mold and the aflatoxin, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a delay, and we have to address that delay, particularly in light of that rapid turnaround time for the incoming for some of the holiday markets. But nonetheless, if you use steam or PPO, boom, your micro goes down. You'll control all the field insects. PPO, it's not really a residual effect, but the way PPO works is that it will modify those biomolecules, and you'll get a continued effect as it goes on. Steam, the beauty of steam is, of course, there's no residual, but this also means that those populations can rebound, right? Because you're never really controlling all of the mold. And then you still got storage and maintenance fumigations, and figuring out when you're going to do the storage and maintenance fumigations is a huge part of what we do now. And this kind of summarizes the challenges, and I could stand up here and talk for another hour about how we can take these different technical approaches. At the end of the day, we need to make decisions based on what markets you're at, what tools you have, what infrastructure, what your timing constraints are. And so, I encourage you to reach out to the board or reach out to the group here. We can meet and work with you and liaise with perhaps a fumigation service provider. But really, we need a way to conveniently address these pathogens, right? That's a major, major focus. We need a way to rapidly disinfest. I'm talking when you've got that product and you're gonna have your hands on it for less than 5 days, these field insects. And this is because sulfuryl fluoride and phosphine, they don't work on the same timescales as methyl bromide, and you really need to strategize about how you use them. And then finally, with most of these alternatives, you have to synchronize these storage fumigations with the timing of the egg hatch. This is a big thing. The egg is the target, and there would be nothing more foolish than to fumigate, kill all of the post-embryonics, the adults, the larvae, and then not allow enough time for the eggs to hatch, and fumigate again, and then really waste all of your money, right? So this takes some time and some consideration. We'll be working with industry to kind of piece together, hopefully, a roadmap for you guys. And then Gabrielle had really asked me to talk about the Carpophilus truncatus and give a little update here. And, unfortunately, I had a poster that never made it up, and I had hundreds of pictures of insect eggs. We spend a lot of time studying these insect eggs, and I'm really glad that the previous speakers kept bringing up red flower beetle. And the reason why red flower beetle is such a pain, at least in my opinion, is because it doesn't have any holes in the egg. And unfortunately, this Carpophilus truncatus is the same way. they don't have holes in the egg because they want to retain the moisture. And generally, these beetles, they'll hatch pretty fast. But if you can't get a gas in there, good luck trying to control it. And that includes with, even contact insecticides, right? So this new beetle, it has no holes. The control strategy is going to be quite a bit like red flower beetle and confused flower beetle. Without a way to get the gas in, you're really going to be reliant on how long does it take to hatch so I don't have to control the eggs, and I can do a repeat fumigation, hopefully with lower levels of gas. And this is kind of a gradient of what these eggs look like. The next you would have maybe like the dried fruit beetle or the cigarette beetle, where you have marginal porosity and you can get some gases in there, including, remove the oxygen from it, et cetera. They've got gas portals. And with these insects, again, beetles typically, they metabolize pretty quick. They're developing relatively fast. And so something like phosphine that's metabolically activated is generally easier to use than some of the other molecules because that's how it operates, right? It needs a metabolism. Controlling eggs, there's nothing easy about it. But relative to a moth, which develops slower, that would be an option. Finally, you've got the moths. Here you've got a picture of the navel orangeworm egg. There are holes all over these things, and they develop really slowly. And because they develop so slowly, they need a lot of gas exchange because it's a long developmental time course. Now, the good thing is if you're using a gas that is reactive, like methyl bromide, sulfuryl fluoride, propylene oxide, or even ethyl formate, you can get it into those eggs. So, depending on what your pest is, on where you're going, we can kind of tailor the best approach forward for you guys. And thanks a bunch for listening to me. Thanks for the invitation.
With that, can we thank the panelists again for taking the time to present? And now we have another reception down at the trade show floor, and I forget what the drink ticket situation is, but there are drinks available. Come and visit the poster sessions. Again, if they'll still be up. And stop by the Almond Board booth if you haven't picked up this research update. And with that, thank you.